Thank you very much. I feel very privileged to address you at this closing session. And I would like to perhaps begin my closing remarks by thanking all of you for your presence, the speakers for their very stimulating interventions, and all the audience for your presence and for engaging with very interesting questions in the discussion. For myself, at least, and I'm sure that for some of you too, this has been a very intense day. And I will perhaps just make a few observations on the issues that we've been discussing today. To start with migration. Clearly, from what was discussed here, our societies and European countries as such are undergoing a process of transformation with numerous challenges, as many of the speakers emphasized. And each of us, at our levels and within our institutions and organizations, face ourselves with the need to adapt to these changes and to find solutions to challenges and actions that often do not appear to address properly children's rights. Actions that actually do not appear to take into account their best interest. Although these principles and rights are considered to be firmly established in international standards and conventions, and all the member states and governments have committed to implement and enforce them for any child that is present under their jurisdiction, irrespective of who they are or where they come from. Some of the examples and stories that were shared with us today brought to light deeper questions, not only about the short-term impact, but also the long-term implications for migrant and refugee children in Europe today, and for our societies as well and our role. This links into a much wider reflection on how this reflect and affect the state of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law in Europe, and what can be done to realize and to reinforce them. That is very much the essence of the Council of Europe's mission, and our compass in this time still remains the European Convention of Human Rights, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and other key relevant instruments developed to strengthen the human rights of children. So if I were to summarize the message that I'm taking from this morning session and reflect it in a positive way, as we've been constantly invited to think positive and not negative to all these problems, I would just say that we can and must do better, and that better outcomes will inevitably lead to brighter future and opportunities for these children, for our societies and countries, and for Europe. For the Council of Europe, our roadmap for the period ahead is set out in the strategy for the rights of the child that you have probably seen outside the room, which is for the period 2016 to 2021, and also on the strategic priorities of our organization, which have been presented this year to better ensure the safety and the proper treatment of migrant and asylum-seeking children in Europe, having a specific focus on those who are unaccompanied. A concrete action plan will be presented early 2017. During discussions today, there have been several speakers that have emphasized the need for child-friendly common responses at European level. And I'm actually very pleased, for those that are not familiar with the work that the Ad Hoc Committee for the Rights of the Child of the Council of Europe is conducted. This committee has been mandated to elaborate by the end of next year a clear set of proposals for standards on legal guardianship and age assessment. We realize that this is not an easy task, particularly that the policies and practices of our 47 member states are often very different, but it is our ambition to think outside the box and to ensure that the proposals will include adequate policy and practical measures for these children, which are not only child-friendly, but also fully respectful of their rights. Coming to internet and this afternoon, obviously the digital environment, the media and technological developments touch upon virtually every dimension of children's rights. And we have heard about equal access, about freedom of expression and information, freedom of association and assembly, privacy issues, data protection issues, education, the need for further literacy, protection from violence, exploitation, inappropriate content, just to remind you a few. These issues obviously have also to be addressed from a child rights angle. So my takeaway from this afternoon, both as a Council of Europe member, but also as a parent, is first of all that we should definitely not underestimate the risks, the impact on the health of the children, but also we shouldn't underestimate the importance of empowering through education children, their parents, who are supposed to be their role models, their carers, their teachers, in order for them to better understand children's rights on the internet and also to protect them, whether that happens online or offline. And inevitably, such processes will have to be supported strategically by governments and policymakers through coordinated and active efforts in direct partnerships with the relevant stakeholders, including private sector and NGOs, of course. But also by taking into account the views of children. The rights of the child in the digital environment is also one of the key areas of the work of the committee. We have started a process that will lead in upcoming month to developing guidelines for member states to empower, protect, and support children's safe access to their rights on internet. And some of you today may be tomorrow directly involved in this work. So by way of concluding, I would just like to stress that, of course, this is a one-time event, but from the Council of Europe perspective, we do intend to build on the discussions and the conclusions of this meeting. We expect, inevitably, that our policy and standard-setting work within the Council of Europe on migration and digital environment, through the work of the ad hoc committee on the rights of the child, but not only, because there are a number of other actors in the Council of Europe that are also dealing with these issues, we will succeed to trigger further progress and further commitment by our member states to implement fully and effectively children's rights in these two areas. But of course, your active role and your active support in this area is very much needed, and we definitely look forward to continuing our cooperation with you in the near future. Finally, on behalf of the Council of Europe, I would like to express my deep appreciation to the Estonian government for their sustained support and commitment to the child rights agenda of the Council of Europe, for the warm hospitality despite the winter that I feel outside, and for the very, very hard work that has been made in which has resulted in this conference being a success. And last but not least, and I hope you will all agree with me, I think we need to do a special thank you to the children for their extraordinary contribution to the event. Thank you very much.